Teste, teste, olá. Esquerdinhos. Boa tarde. A comissária está mesmo a chegar, está bem? Obrigada.
hear me?
Yep.
Can you speak so that I can...
Yes, I'm speaking. Can you hear me?
Yes. No. Yes, I can hear you. Not perfect, but I can hear.
Okay.
Oh no, now it's improving.
Let's start it. So, a little bit of delay. So we'll speak always in English, even regarding this for Portuguese University. I'm going to present a little bit the conditions of this panel so this is integrated in this broader debate about Economia Viva from the Nova School of Business and Economics and promoted by the Nova Economics Club and the Nova SB Students Union. So we have the panel here about the future of Europe integration, plenty of things to talk and short time to make it. So I have information that the Commissioner just have one hour of to us to talk, but this panel we have till 5:30. In the first part, I will give 10 minutes to each debater to speak a little bit about these issues, and then we go to a little bit part of Q&A if there is one, because so the Commissioner have to leave before the end of the panel. So let's do it. We have Commissioner Elisa Ferreira. That she has the big portfolio, big important portfolio of cohesion reform. So there are a lot of things that she has to deal in the near future regarding the post-pandemic situation, also the distribution of more very important funds to the country. So we expect to have some news on this panel and some important views from the part of the Commissioner. Also, two really important and Portuguese MEPs, Leitão Marques from Partido Socialista and also Lídia Pereira from PST. So I'll go to Commissioner. Thank you for receiving us. And the issue of the European project shows us how, in times of greatest adversity, Europe tends to move towards greater integration. In this way, the current pandemic crisis is a key moment for us to reflect on our past and on what we aspire for the future, starting in particular with the desired levels of integration and expansion, going through the current internal problems and ending with the main desires of young people in relation to the European institutions. Commissioner, we talked to an audience of students, university students, that of course maybe a lot of them are European, completely integrated in the European values. What is your feeling right now about European integration in the main tasks and the main achievements that we have to comply in the near future?
First of all, thank you very much for organizing this discussion, and I think it's very timely because we are in a crucial moment where we have a perception, a different perception in view of a crisis that is not over yet. We have a better perception of how useful or otherwise Europe was in this present context, but also that helps us to have a vision on the future. And in fact, it's true that the traditional way of people justifying why Europe has greatly well, it's not a guarantor of peace and prosperity. And this time, I think everybody started our first generation started looking at this issue of peace and as something that they could take for granted. And at a certain point there was this question, okay, what is Europe best?
crisis, and at those moments we saw Europe moving forward and being more closely integrated. It happened with the stagnation of the economy in the 70s and 80s, and then we went forward with the European single market. It happened in the follow-up of the 2008 crisis, and we went forward with the banking union, with the authorities supervising the three kinds of financial entities, so insurance and banking, and also the financial products, and in fact this happened several times, and I think this created a new perception of Europe for citizens in general, and in particular, I think it's important to understand that this movement forward, this increased momentum for integration and for solving together the problems, is not the obvious outcome of every crisis. We saw it in 2008 that the discussions went almost out of control when the 2008 crisis evolved into a sovereign debt crisis, and we saw that it was not guaranteed. Europe is a very strange phenomenon because you have not decided where you want to end, so you are somehow adjusting to what is required, and the political will to move in that direction often is not really guaranteed. And now we have this recent crisis, this 2019, 20, and that is still there, of the COVID, something that we had never dreamed of. And this time, I think Europe had less hesitation, and we moved forward, in fact, in a very progressive way. And now we have to define where we want to go. And I think having also proposed to the Europeans that there will be a discussion on the future of Europe in which we want to listen to the citizens is in itself a sign that everybody is called in for a proper discussion of where Europe is supposed to go and to move. But in fact, with this crisis, the initial instinct was for countries to close themselves on themselves and to close the borders. And then we realized that if we close the borders, people that live close to the borders some of them could not go to work. Others had the nearest hospital was across the border and they could not go there. And so that medicine could not get through. Basic industrial and food products could not cross. And this lasted a couple of weeks. And immediately people started realizing that we had to address it from a different angle. And at the same time, I think that European institutions moved very quickly this time, very, very quickly, to give answers. Of course, the ECB immediately moved, the IB moved, the rules from Stability and Growth Pact, the clause that allows you to suspend it during a crisis was activated for the first time. This was in the legal text since 2011, but it was activated for the first time. And the cohesion policy, of which I'm responsible, we made something that never happened before, was to go, and with the support of the European Parliament and Council, we in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks or so, we changed the legislation because we had to do it in order to use, as you know, the support for cohesion is a multi-annual support. So the framework that was being used was the 2014-2020 that can be paid until 2023. And we made a change that would allow all the member states to use whatever funds they still had in their national envelopes, and that were not completely spent or completely engaged into certain projects to reprogram them and to reprogram them with full flexibility. So by the end of the day, since March, the member states are using March of the beginning of the pandemic. Member states are using the money, and it added up to 23, and the state can use it where it was needed. So you paid for support to small restaurants, to small and medium companies, to hire extra workers for the health service. You could do whatever, to buy computers for children. So you did everything. Then there was a massive game changer because the Commission proposed, and again Parliament and Council accepted it, that in fact we could for the first time go to the financial sector, go to the markets and borrow in the name of the Commission with guarantee the, and so for the first time Europe issued long-term bonds, and with this amount of money that adds up to more than 800 billion euros to be paid between 2000, until 2057. You entered the bond market, and you created an instrument, and this is Generation EU. But with this, you created an instrument to make effectively a counter-cyclical. But didn't have until now the March maneuver, and so the size of European budget that was always a constraint to make what something equivalent to the United States or China or a lot of countries did, with this initiative that was unique and an historic breakthrough, managed in fact to the plan for recovery and resilience, to this adding 800 billion to the usual multi-annual budget. You have an amount of 2 trillion to support recovery, and to support recovery under new the idea is build back better. So actually to build on the basis of a more cohesive Europe, because otherwise you fragment Europe, on a more environmentally sensitive Europe, so the greening, and on a more digital and technological based Europe. And this is what was done until now, and we reinforced also by an amount over 50 billion the cohesion funds of the 2014-2020 period. And so at this moment we are launching the 2021-2027 cohesion plans, but in fact cohesion became a very, very strong of this catching back. Completely new framework in which side now because wasn't now, of course I just mentioned more big going to the market and development of vaccines was the other side of this strategy, of this more economic strategy. And so, making sure that not only Europe would have a certain autonomy to control the production and distribution of vaccines, but to export these vaccines and to be able to allocate to the member states at the same time enough quantity of vaccines to solve the vaccine problem. Of course, I could refer to the digital passport for COVID and all this, but just two or three aspects that really will become a mark of this moment for Europe. And the last comment, also in relation to this economic strategy, is that we will only borrow from or ask member states to feed the European budget to pay this debt through national contributions if we want to have new own resources. Own resources is something that Europe has been asking, the Commission has been asking for too long, for a long time, because in fact the traditional resources themselves are the solution of the lowering of the tariff, the border tariffs that disappeared with time, the barriers associated with agricultural policy went down, the sugar contributions went down, and so in fact this is something completely new. So this is a landmark for how are we going to address health. Will health be another element for the future Europe? What will happen with this recovery and resilience facility? Are we going to have some permanent instrument based on these new own resources / debt in order to have an anti-cyclical permanent instrument or a permanent instrument to reinforce the budget? Will we reflect on, now that we are going to reintroduce the Stability and Growth Pact, is it going to be adjusted or adapted to this hindsight that we have now? We start finishing banking union, because in fact, 3 pillars, the guarantee of deposits was never possible to be done, and there are risks on the financial sector that will materialize if we don't address them. So, the future is something that has got to be discussed with member states, with parliament members, but also with citizens, and this created a new perspective, I think, an updated perspective, confirming that in fact, if we do the right things in the right moments, we are stronger together than by oneself. And I think this is the kind of message that I debate, and I'll try to follow the debate as long as possible.
Commissioner, thank you very much. Let's hear the other part of another institution, the MEPs. Lídia, Pereira, I'll start with you. I don't know if you want to comment something that the Commissioner has talked. I don't know if you agree with this scenario at all. And what is your thoughts about this new integration, the way the integration in the European Union is done right now, regarding these difficult tasks that we have, and of course the situation now with COVID, and also the problem with Ukraine, and regarding that, we are talking to a very young audience of university students. Thank you very much for being
good afternoon to everyone, and let me first start by thanking the kind invitation to join this panel discussion, such a high-level panel discussion, and take the opportunity as well to greet my colleagues, panelists, Commissioner Elisa Ferreira, and my dear friend from the same from the town, Coimbra, Maria Manuel, Leitão, Marques, and of course to greet Filipe, who I didn't had the chance to cross paths in the last months, but I wish you a good year. I would well, I mostly there are some points eventually divergent from what was just said by Commissioner Elisa, but indeed I agree with one of the very last topics she pointed out, which is the conclusion or the completion of the banking union, which is pending for a long time already. And with such a different and such a volatile financial sector that we are getting into with different actors, different players. And I'm referring, for example, to these concepts of crypto actives, cryptocurrencies, the digital euro, so many things happening in such a short period of time, and we have to address it because crises won't be the same as we used to deal with before. But before perhaps going into a more detailed debate, I just wanted to share a few thoughts more on the political nature of the European integration, because the truth is that European integration is by nature an unfinished process. And we just heard the words of Commissioner Elisa that we moved forward with the crisis that we've been facing, and the pandemic is a good example of that. So we have to discuss the future, and this year I think it is particularly important. In the next spring, we are going supposedly to hear the conclusions on the conference on the future of Europe, which is an important discussion and sometimes a bit neglected by the national debate. But perhaps 2022 is, perhaps no, for sure, 2022 is also a year of celebration, where we are celebrating important milestones in the integration process in the last 65 years. So we are celebrating the 65th anniversary of the treaty, which is the ground zero of the European integration. We are celebrating, we actually marked yesterday the celebration of the anniversary, the 30th anniversary of the Maastricht Treaty, which consolidated key aspects of our integration. And last but not least, but it's also a dear topic to me, and it's the 35th anniversary of Erasmus. And I encourage all students who are watching us today to consider to do the Erasmus program that I think has given a great contribution to promote the European values and to promote the diversity of our European culture. These dates that inspire us and are responsible for the construction of a project that has already won a Nobel Prize. They are not only symbolic. These dates are moments, or must be moments of reflection for the new challenges that we have in front of us. And in the 21st century, experiencing the pandemic, living a climate emergency, digitalization, Europe's greatest success is peace on a continent that has always been at war. So we were successful in achieving that, and I believe we also we will be successful as well in the various challenges we have ahead of us, including the environment, including digitalization, including the complexity or the more complex environment in democracies that we are also adapting to. And we are, in terms of environment, let me just make here a small remark. We are the first global bloc or regional bloc having a climate law approved. Europe is moving forward, and the history proves it. And, it was not so long ago where we had the opportunity to vote on the climate law. Climate change, the effects are some of them reversible, and therefore our territories, our communities, the economic activities will have to adapt to it. We are witnessing at the moment in Portugal a long period of drought, which poses a lot of difficulties for the different activities that depend on water, and ourselves as well. So we have to think about new ways of addressing it, because we have to keep fighting climate change, but we also have to start thinking about adapting the communities to that. I do believe that Europe is a good example of how we can make compatible growth and environment. So I don't think when we address this issue, and I think the European Union has been at the forefront of putting or addressing the question of environment in the right way. Since 1999 or 1990, the beginning of the 1990s, Europe has been fighting or has been addressing environment, and at the same time there has been economic growth. So we have to push for this model. We have to perhaps adjust this model, and we have to find and foster further efficiency in the use of resources which are limited, to move into a clean and circular economy. Recovery has to be environmentally responsible and economically inclusive. Emmanuel Macron, when he was presenting the priorities of the French presidency for the European semester, for example, he used an expression that I still recall. We need and sustainable capitalism. That's why I was saying that we need to address the framework where we will live in a different way. We have to adapt and we have to adjust. Especially because this will be the best vaccine for the great threats to the European integration that I identify as being populism and nationalism. I think we are going to, what we have witnessed in different, a little bit across Europe, is the damage that was provoked by COVID-19, either in economies, but most importantly in human lives. So we have to bear in mind that the economic activity of Europe, the recovery, can be a platform that can somehow fuel populism if the solutions proposed by the European Union don't match people's expectations. And Commissioner Elisa, she mentioned this in a different way, but we need to perceive economy not only as the backbone of the European integration process, but also most importantly as the source of the welfare state, personal freedom, and a better future. So we have to strengthen the economic competencies of the European Union and to couple them with social measures, being it, and they were mentioned already today, healthcare, research, data sharing, and so on. But of course, and this is one of the risks that also triggers populism or feeds populism, is that the policies are decided in Brussels, and by nature they are transnational, but we cannot forget the Union's motto: we are united in diversity. By this I mean that the path for integration cannot be too intrusive, and then I can explain later if there's curiosity to what I'm referring to. But the Union is now integrated with 27 different member states. It's a very levels of democratic maturity, different levels of economic development, and in the conception of public policies, we cannot neglect the national aspirations. And perhaps we have to rethink how institutions work, because the world in which they were created a few decades ago has changed a lot. And we need a greater coordination, but always based on a more dialogue than on the perception of imposition. So I think here, dialogue is the best way to persuade for change. And I'm finishing, Filipe, before with my very last remarks.
Okay.
To conclude, the challenges to integration are various. I'm sure we have the time to discuss them more in detail. But I would like to point out that there are important reforms to be accomplished. The completion of the monetary union, for example, as Commissioner Elisa mentioned as well. And we also have other serious problems that remain unanswered and were not addressed in the past years, such as migrations, and demography. And these are issues that as well contribute to further populism, nationalism, and that need to be truly addressed and discussed without extremism, ideological radicalism, or fundamentalism. So despite all this, I am optimistic about the future of Europe and the future of integration of Europe, because history shows us that it's an unfinished business, an unfinished process. And so we must keep uniting citizens, and we must keep strengthening our union.
Thank you so much, Lídia Pereira, for these thoughts. Of course, a lot of things that we have to talk about European integration in the future. We go now to Maria Manuel Leitão Marques. Thank you very much for your time also, and for this opportunity to us to talk about your thoughts about the future of European integration in an audience of young students, university students. Of course, they are always interested in these matters. And also, I want to ask you about your main thoughts about the future, what path that we have to go, and maybe the risks of not complying with that integration. Thank you so much. Well, we are not hearing you. Maybe talking again. And now? Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Filipe, and thank you very much for the invitation, and congratulations for this important initiative. And also, I would like to greet Elisa and Lídia that are with me. A lot of things were said, but I'm going to do a different approach and try to answer to this question: where to go further in European integration and how to do things differently, namely in order to reduce the gaps between European institutions and European citizens. All of us benefit from European integration, but some of us forget it often or even do not know how much. And this is a problem we need to tackle. Concerning the first point, where to go further, there are two different situations I want to highlight. Of course, Elisa has presented some problems, and Lídia too, on monetary union, but I would like to make a difference between the areas in which there is a strong legal base to deep European integration. This is the case, for example, when it comes to the internal market, special internal market of services, including digital single market, to which I will come in a minute. And second, we have other areas in which there is not a strong legal basis for integration, such as social issues, considering the EU limit competences on social matters. Let me start by the first, with the case of the digital single market. In here, the EU has a strong legal basis to act and propose binding legislative proposal, regulation, or directives. Despite this, until recently, the EU had not been paying enough attention to digital. The directive that is now in place, named e-commerce directive, is more than 20 years old. It was created a while without Facebook or Twitter, and has long been outdated, of course. And more recently, we have seen the rise of proposals that aim to regulate different aspects of the digital markets, such as Digital Service Act, we are now discussing in the Parliament, Digital Markets Act, AI Act, Regulation on
European digital identity to refer only the more transversal proposals, but there are much more that are going to be discussed in the Parliament, much more proposals that coming from the Commission. So we know the rise of the digital world has brought many benefits for our lives, increased connectivity between people and greater efficiency of public and private service, but also create new problems we need to tackle, such as gatekeeper, disinformation, hate speech, cyber violence, often target at women. So the challenge associated to the digital world will likely increase with the emergence of new technologies such as 5G, metaverse, and Internet of Bodies, not only Internet of Things. And so we need faster integration and, of course, common regulation also in order to influence other parts of the world as we did with GDPR before. Let me now move to another category where we need to go further, but where we do not have strong legal base to do so, as it was the case, that is the case of social issues. In here, the competencies of the EU are limited, and most proposals in this field, of course, are non-binding. The European Pillar of Social Rights, for example, was proclaimed in 2017 at Gothenburg Summit with 20 key principles that should guide us towards a Europe that is fair and inclusive, but until the COVID crisis, very little had been done to put them in practice. So the COVID pandemic, but not only the COVID pandemic, also the twin transition, climate and digital, require a strong European social dimension so that we leave no one behind. And I think we all agree on that. And this is a key aspect to motivate commitments, for example, on the employment and poverty reduction, as member states did during the Porto Social Summit organized by the Portuguese presidency in May. However, the implementation of these commitments depends largely on member states. So giving the EU a greater role in this area would require changing the treaties, which is very unlikely in my opinion. So what to do? Maybe took advantage of a context in which social concerns were high, and we're now, for instance, debating binding legal proposals such as directive on minimum wage. If you had asked the policymakers a few years ago if a directive like this would be possible, they would have said no. And Elisa showed us that there is no impossible missions, because during the COVID, for instance, European institutions had decided very fast comparing to other situations before and times of decision before, and have decided about very problematic issues related to financial instruments, the budget, own resources, and so on. So there is no impossible. The same is happening in health matters, where the current crisis has shown the potential for the EU to bring add value in the field of health. Similar to social affairs, health is an area in which the competences rest mostly in member states. So, but the COVID pandemic has shown that sometimes EU-level action is more adequate, as it was the case of the common purchase of vaccines. And in the near future, there are other opportunities. For example, the common acquisition of some expensive drugs, or the building of a European health data space that is so important, not only for research, but to manage to better management of certain diseases such as cancer, rare diseases, or pandemics. Finally, a final point, we also need to discuss what to do different and how do different. And this is a very big challenge, not only for the Parliament, but for all the European institutions, agency, European commissions, of course, Council, and so on. Here, I would like to highlight the need to reduce the gap between citizens and the European institutions. This is one the main objectives and maybe the most important results of the conference on the future of Europe, which aims to give a voice to citizens about our common future. It promotes citizen-led debate via a multilingual digital platform and both national and European citizens panels to enable citizens to express their views about what the future of Europe should look like. While it's still ongoing, everybody can participate. I hope this conference will be only the first of many high-level efforts to bring citizens closer to the European Union and give them a voice in their future, and also to better communicate what we do in European institutions. To sum up, we need to go further with integration where we have legal base to do so. In areas such as social affairs, we need to go further using the legal basis and taking advantage of the context in a smart way, and until we have condition to change the treaties in a pro-European approach. And finally, we need to do things differently when it comes to bridging the gap between citizens and European institutions. Initiatives like this one certainly help to make that to happen. And once again, I would like to thank you for the invitation and to say I count on your active voice so that this gap is reduced. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I open the floor for questions. I will check in the Q&A chat box, but I have some ideas for us to talk about this integration and the need of near the communication between the institutions and the citizens, and like as we are doing this conversation via Zoom. Now it's one legacy of the pandemics that the funny thing is that is easier right now to talk with the MEPs and even the European Commissioner because of the new Zoom reality. But there are a lot of things that we have to do. Of course, there is the future of the conference on the future of Europe that is a really important issue. But Commissioner, what practical things, now that you are a commissioner and you have the experience of being part of a big part of European Union, even regarding the pandemics and restrictions and the problems of traveling to the member states, what are practical things that we have to do aside from conferences and these kind of things? How can we provide a more practical integration for citizens?
Well, first of all, let me tell you that these initiatives and such active and informed people, participants like Manuel and Lídia, that I salute, and you, this helps a lot. I think Zoom helps us to be closer to And in fact, I've been in I don't know how many webinars with the students and with the students. I think also from our side, from the side of the Commission, we really want to listen to people, and I do my best to be present when I'm invited. That help you to participate, because very often there is, and in particular in certain countries, in Portugal, people feel that they aren't necessarily in the state of mind of participating. And a lot of European legislation, I would say most of it, starts with listening to people and putting a text, a preliminary text for people and for institutions to participate in the discussion. For instance, very recently, the Stability and Growth Pact and revision of Stability and Growth Pact was put for consultation in the internet. This is something that if you want, if you can, think some times that people participate. This helps a lot. The second that I think is important is to organize debates like this, and to make sure that what comes from this discussion and debate is shared. Of course, it has to be informed. To be interested in European affairs, and if you allow me, I think it's important that people not only participate in Erasmus, and Lídia mentioned it, it's a very interesting project, but then it is also important that people apply to work in European institutions, because in fact, when we joined the European Union, there was a lot of interest. Then there was this conception that in Europe for some countries, and so of course the procedure is not simple. Of course it isn't. It's a competition, but many informed and active and competent people, and I think it's important that in fact they are interested also to participate, because having different nationalities is in itself a value-added functioning of Europe. Also, we work, for instance, in cohesion policy, we work in the partnership kind of framework. And this partnership has a lot of advantages and a lot of disadvantages. The big advantage is that in fact, the pre-arranged envelopes of funding between the member state and the European Commission. And this becomes so visible, like in the RRP, that the RRP actually treats interest. So in the RRP you have, in the plan for recovery and resilience, you have about 14 billion euros to be spent until 2026. But in cohesion policy, you have around 22 billion for a longer period. So also internally, we have, and this is the legislation, we have monitoring committees. And it's very important that people are engaged in this monitoring. There is support. If you really want to participate, you have got to make a for the state to include these entities in the monitoring committees, so that really you follow what is the proposal of the country, what you are planning to do, and you have a proper discussion with society, because this is European taxpayers' money. We have this possibility, and it is a legal obligation to have this views, information, and support for entities that want to participate to improve. To give them technical support. My last point is that top is very important. A lot of other funding that is not reallocated the factual, but it's competition, and it is also very important that and Portuguese academia gives visibility to these people that really, and we have a lot of researchers that are already, winning scholarships and support for research projects at the high level, at the pure competitive level, which is like being at the first league or being dependent agreement. So have also a new championship, and it's important to give visibility that you are interested and that work. To close up, I think in fact discussing money, to discussing what you do with money, what are the priorities, what that you need to solve in the country, what are the blocking elements, and one of them is massive imbalance, because we all often hear, so also having a vision moving forward in a more digital, in more environmentally sensitive, but also more cohesive way, is in itself a way to be more resilient. This has a spatial reflection, and I think opening discussions on content and not only on is something that I value very much, that people to understand and to participate in proper common understanding of what are the main targets and what is the main blocking elements, more sustainable development for the future. So thank you again for organizing this, but
that's a good message also, because there are practical things that we can show as a European Union, but also as my experience of doing this kind of panels and others, there are always a talk about what can we do to bridge the gap between citizens and institutions, and it's always a talking point. And I think for us in different positions like Commissioner, MEPs and journalists, we have to provide solutions for helping people to have that kind of access to institutions also, because it's not just an institution problem, it's always also a citizen's responsibility to have that connection. But I want to introduce another thing, because it's talking with the future and opportunities, and to Lídia about the next generation EU and the impact that can provide to the Europe integration, because pandemics also can bring to us opportunities, and about this new pact, this new like everybody is talking about the bazooka and how this bazooka can help countries, and we have a really tough test to the future, and how can we accept this money and provide the real opportunity to people and go forward with integration? What is your thought about that?
Well, first of all, thank you for the question, and I would start by answering the following. The name of the instrument is Next Generation EU. It was not chosen out of the blue or by chance. So on the contrary, I think the name unveils the main objective of the instrument, which is to make the European Union fit for future generations. So this goes in line with all the adaptation and all the adjustments that we are going through. and the money that is going to be available from the program Next Generation EU is exactly to address these challenges. And it was already someone referenced, I don't remember who, but probably the first intervention, we already did one step forward with the issuing of common debt, which is another example of further integrating the European Union. But in what regards in particular the Next Generation EU, is that without the new own resources, the EU legacy will be precisely the opposite. So I mean that instead of offering a better future, we will be offering debts from the past, right? So that can have a bad impact on the European integration. So I hope that the Next Generation EU is actually sufficient and is the unprecedented but adequate response to COVID-19 pandemic. We continue to advocate for social market economy as the best way for creating new jobs, innovating in large scale, and of course safeguarding our high standards on social and environmental matters. So in my view, the Next Generation EU will allow us to keep up with this philosophy, and will help us to complete the digital single market, to develop new ways to reduce emissions and secure affordable energy. So in my perspective of the program of the Next Generation EU is actually it's Europe looking at the future and putting the younger generations at the heart of the policy making. So one thing that we have to guarantee is that the member states are going to comply with the objectives that are put forward at the European level, so we can, of course, level up our economies and, most importantly, people's lives.
Thank you. Also, that question for Maria Leitão Marques, and also introducing another point, that is, we see that in the economic landscape, there are different paths still, different speeds of evolution in the economies. We see now, of course, the economy is really different to analyze right now because of the impact of the pandemic. But we see that countries that more recently came to the club, to the European Union, like Hungary and Poland and others, they are getting a faster economic path than other countries like Portugal or Spain or Italy. Do you think that there are some aspects that countries like Portugal didn't work well and didn't overcome with the problems that they have in their economic landscape? And do you think that instruments like the Next Generation EU can help countries like Portugal?
Yes, of course it can, but we are going to see if it helps at the end of the history. But I think that, of course, there are multi-speed Europe in terms of economic growth, but we need to understand it better in order to understand the reason, sometimes historical reason, that explain this difference, and not only the moment or the government of the moment, no matter what kind of political orientation of different governments. One of the reasons is education and skills. Skills is the word that is behind Filipe, and I'm looking to skills because skills for me is a key. It's a key for Next Generation EU and is a key for Portugal in my opinion, one of the reasons, one of the big difference between Portugal and some eastern states, member states, is education. If you look to the numbers of the proportion of active adults with completed secondary education is higher or much higher than in Portugal. For instance, in Czech Republic, 94% of the population has secondary education compared to 55% in Portugal. And this is a big difference because for me, one of the big challenge in Europe is to have educated people, specialized skills, attracting for digital, for instance, to be competitive in a global perspective, we need to keep our resources, and our best resources are very specialized people. And we need to attract from other countries in the world because we are competing with states, we are competing with India, with China. We need to attract specialized skills from abroad in order to be competitive, be innovative in this area where competition is so high. So, in my opinion, the best option to use the next generation EU is investing in skills, investing in competencies, investing in education, investing in research in a perspective that with a very deep connection between research and innovation. It's my opinion. I wrote about it some months ago, and it's especially important to a country like Portugal. For Europe, there are other challenges we need to tackle. For instance, strategic autonomy. French presidents is very engaged in this objective, and today we receive in the Parliament the CHIPS Act. As you know, semiconductors, it's one of the products where we need to be more autonomous, but for a country like Portugal, also we need to participate in this discussion because strategic autonomy is not the same of European champions in Germany and France. We need a decentralized view of strategic and autonomy, and the digital can help us to do that in a decentralized way.
That's a really good point that I want to put to also to the Commissioner, because of course even Lídia Pereira talked about green economy and a really good quote from President Macron. We have to have a responsible and affordable capitalism, but also about this innovation, the CHIPS Act that President von der Leyen has presented also, and the strategical autonomy of states. There are a lot of big things that we have to address also in this matter. Also because if we face even the energy dependency of other states like Russia, like we see today, when we have a very volatile environment of maybe facing a war between European countries and Russia. And we have a real energy dependence, like we see in Germany with the gas. What do you think about these new issues like the CHIPS Act and the strategic autonomy, Commissioner?
Well, this is really a very crucial discussion and debate. I think this one of the lessons learned from this crisis was also that Europe stopped being, I don't want to be misinterpreted, but naive, in the sense that Europe was integrating itself in the world, in the globalized economy, without a clear vision of what role, what place it wanted to have in that world. And when we saw that we were completely in a moment of crisis where the global ecosystems were interrupted due to the stopping of the transport systems, for instance, that in fact we were completely volatile in Europe and fragile. And this assumption is creating a new approach. And so another element that I would like to add to my previous answer is that it is absolutely strategic that Portugal recognizes the need to be part of this new ecosystem. And this ecosystem calls on universities, on research centers, not to be closed on internal problems, but to be open and to be part of a network. And already in the past Commission, there was with the Portuguese Commissioner Carlos Moedas, there were some missions that were kind of strategic visions, and that was the research on cancer, research on oceans, was already included in this kind of effort to create strategic visions. And now we have an even stronger approach in relation to making more, a stronger Europe by controlling, not closing Europe on itself, but controlling the critical aspects of these global ecosystems that have moved to the future, like, for instance, the space research, like, for instance, the Batteries Alliance, so development of batteries in all the cycles. It's not just the rare earths issue, it's also the recycling of batteries, the research on reducing the size of batteries. This microconductor microchips is another network that is being created. Another one is for instance, cybersecurity and everything that Maria Manuel was referring to, so about the Digital Act. And so it's essential that countries move forward in relation to being not sitting there doing the usual stuff under the protection of this contractual funding, but that you move, particularly universities, move into this high level of creating ecosystems and participating in them. Of course, hydrogen is another one, but diversifying where you bet, where you engage, is in itself very important. And going a little bit backwards, if you allow me, in relation to your question, and Maria Manuel already answered to it somehow, but in fact, tomorrow we are going to publish the Cohesion Report. And I call on you in this dialogue, please see what is the picture of Europe now, and see how you have, in fact, very low level in terms of GDP per capita. It could be other indicators, but yes, we still have very poor regions, but in fact, also the regions that move from a very low level of development and they start solving structural problems, they grow very fast. And this is the first stage based on infrastructure. So you start building roads, making sewage treatment, supplies of water, waste management, and also in Portugal. And you see big progress when you move from this low level into the medium level. Then, when you reach the medium level, we have a lot of regions in Europe that are what I call caught in the middle. So they are when you finish the pure basic infrastructure, primary infrastructure phase, then things become more complicated. And then aspects like the excessive centralization of certain countries, the quality of administration, the level of education, the level of skills, the quality of institutions, being it municipalities or being it universities, makes a lot of difference, because then you have got to move into more sophisticated areas. And the other element is when you have a country that is all of it lagging behind, with just one or two poles of development, even if these poles of development, they reach, even when they reach 150% of the overall European average, if the rest of the country is lagging behind because of the demographic weight of the rest of the country, you are stuck. You are stuck. And so this is something on which we are opening a discussion with citizens as well. What are the elements that can make a difference? Having said this, of course, we all know that when these newcomers joined in 2004 and 2007, of course, they were, as Maria Manuel was saying, departing from very low levels of education, very low levels of wages, very high levels of education, professional training, and they were geographically and historically part of the center of Europe. So you take the old history, Austro-Hungarian Empire, you take the northern areas of Europe, and you have a natural kind of relationship in terms of language, in terms of knowledge, in terms of past history, and this created, in fact, a very positive environment. Let's see if when they reach the this middle of the bridge kind of development level, if in fact, because of all this, if they manage to really grow very fast, or if they also have the same kind of reaction that Southern and Southeastern Europe had. So in fact, you have Italy, Greece, Spain, Portugal, in fact, with this kind of impression that they are stuck in the middle. In the development of the different regions, and they are not. And after the crisis of 2008, in particular, the countries that were caught in the middle and that belonged to the monetary union, they really, suffered much more than other countries that really were not so engaged. But this is another discussion that we may have. But in fact, even now, we have different patterns of suffering from economically from this pandemic, and and there is no coincidence between the areas that suffered more in terms of mortality and the areas that suffered more in terms of economic disruption. It depends on, for instance, regions that are close to the border, regions that depend on tourism, that depend on industry. They suffered much more than those that could immediately move into digital connections and keep more or less the same kind of activity that they had before. But this was reflected in the amount of money that is distributed in the RRPs, in the next use of the next generation, and also in the Cohesion React-EU, this extra funding that was created. It is reflected, the actual figures about the degradation of the economy and the increase of social problems. So just to finish, at this moment, we are exactly discussing with member states, and I insist on this. Yes, next generation and the recovery plan is very important, but it is much less money than the multi-annual cohesion program. We are waiting for we are in the middle of the discussions. Greece already presented their plan in July. A lot of member states have presented already their plans, what they want to do. And in Portugal, the amount of money that is in cohesion policy until 27 is much more, is almost the double of what you have in the recovery plan. And the bazooka is the recovery plan. We called it like that because it's new and it adds to the other funds. But the discussion of how we want to use, what is the vision for the country, is one of the elements that is required, it's needed And it is important that people participate in this discussion, because this will determine what the country will be in 2030. So for the next generation that Lydia was, and I'm very glad that she mentioned it, what matters is how are we going to use this money? This is a public discussion that we need to use in order to have a contract between the country and the Commission that in fact materializes the perception of people. And this is something that has got to be discussed because we are asking also for it. So, I mean, the opportunities are there, but let me finish by quoting, I think, Seneca. I often do it. There is no good wind for those that don't know which port they want to go to. I mean, I'm quoting by heart, but if you don't know where you want to go, you are going to use the money as you used to do. So you'll just put water on sand, and also to make a development strategy. You cannot split the money all across the different places. You have got to have the right level of aggregation and the right level of vision, so that in fact you join forces and you deliver what you want to deliver and use the instruments, different instruments, because we cannot ask for more money at this stage. We have a lot of money. So the important thing is to know where you want to go on the different aspects that the country has to bridge. And in the bazooka, for the first time, you can finance reforms. So when you talk about the need to reform the public administration or social security or the justice system, you can finance everything. You can finance the training of people, you can finance the computers, you can finance everything. You can finance the renovation, the energy renovation of buildings. So, I mean, let's think, let's go to details, and because that's where the devil hides, is inside the details. So let's go, let's discuss properly what the country wants to do, and the country is a territory and people. So I think it's a good opportunity for you, and the report will be published tomorrow. So I suggest that you have another webinar on the conclusions and understanding what is the situation at this moment in Europe, and how what we can do to have a better future.
Well, I'm really curious on that report, and I'm going to read it tomorrow. But thank you so much for your thoughts, and also we are just finishing. Just take you 9 more minutes of your time, and we have a question that it's really embellished with your thoughts, because maybe I can put it to Lydia. I don't know if she has any comment on what the Commissioner has said, but also I put this question: how can EU institutions help member states solve internal problems like the strong need for reforms and strengthening of the trust in the Portuguese judicial system, as an example?
Well, thank you for the question. Well, I think it's exactly the beauty of the European Union is that we can actually, being united in diversity, we can leverage on the best practices from our fellow member states, and we can learn from what the good examples are in some other countries, and eventually consider to import the framework of the functioning of those frameworks to other countries. Of course, respecting and taking and acknowledging that the cultures are different, that the language is different. But I think it is one of the most important things that, and I think it's what the Commission does. Even though there are other instruments that the Commission uses to point out certain things that member states should tackle or should focus on. For example, the European semester serves for that, to align economic and budgetary policies, fiscal policies across the Union. But I think it is the sharing of the knowledge that is so enriched in other countries that we can actually improve ourselves. And I say this because what I see in a number of occasions, and especially when I'm negotiating with other colleagues a specific report, or we are from different countries, so it's less common to have a colleague from our own country. But in those occasions, I see that the structure of thinking, the way of arranging or debating, or and I think sometimes it makes more sense the way some other does, and eventually I might import, as I said, that attitude or the way a colleague does that. I think it makes sense. Why not implementing myself? And I think at the institutional level is not that different. Of course, it's a very simplistic way as I'm putting it, but that's why the Commission has a lot of other resources. There's agencies, there are many other European bodies that assist the governments, the national governments, in pursuing such implementation of institutional changes. In particular for the judicial system, I think a lot of criticism on the judicial system comes with the fact that it's very slow. And given that we were discussing about the opportunity that the Next Generation EU brings, focusing on, and there was a lot of criticism for the fact that the national recovery plan is very much focused on the public sector. The judicial system is eventually one of the ones that should be targeted to make the processes more simple or less lengthy and taking a lot of time and consuming, and time is money. So I think we have here a good opportunity to do a deep reform of the judicial system and making it more modern and more responsive for the challenges that we have ahead of us.
Okay, Lydia, thank you so much. I was just rushing in because Maria Leitão Marques has to go. I don't know if you have one more thought about our discussion.
Only a small comment. It's very good to know that we can invest in reform in our public institutions. Of course, I think it's very important. I was in charge in the past of administrative modernization. I know how it's important, not only in justice, other areas of the government, at least all the areas of the government, but it's very, very important to invest in order to transform, not only to new computers, refreshment of the systems, but not deeply transformed. Now using technologies in data, it's very important. We need to invest in our data, not only at European level, because data is very important to our economy and to the economy of the future. It's why Commissioner Breton is trying to organize European data spaces, not only for health, but for other areas such as agriculture, mobility, and so on. And that at national level, we also need to invest in our public data and in justice. It's a very, very smart way to change, because we speak a lot on the reform of justice, but as I know how to what to do, and when I see, we need to reform just in order to speed the process, it's nothing to say. We need to a very precise reform, chirurgical reform, and we need to know what to do. And sometimes it's only to manage better, using data, more transparency, using technology to transform, and not only to digitalize the process, because electronic bureaucracy, it's worse than physical bureaucracy. It is my last words. Thank you very much. And to do that, sometimes we need to experiment before scaling, because sometimes we don't know the results, and so we need to go step by step. There are not a big reform of state. This doesn't exist at all in any country. I've never seen it. So thank you very much. Thank you, Elisa. Thank you, Lídia. Thank you, Filipe. And thank you for this initiative so important. And of course, I'm always available to participate. And I'm sorry, I need to go to my group. This is our African week, and we have some initiatives where I need to be. Thank you very much. See you.
Thank you so much. We are always also ending a final thought for Commissioner.
Yes. Well, just to thank Maria Manuel and a very interesting speech and Lídia. And I would just like to go back to the question because I think it should be clearly answered. This is one of the issues on which, as Maria Manuel was saying, the reform of the justice system cannot be imposed because there is no legal basis for that. But Lídia mentioned the semester, and it is very true that in the semester there are country-specific recommendations. Country-specific recommendations that for certain member states that, for instance, violate the rule of law, there is this demand, this specific demand that is legally sound, that they have got to operate these changes. But for the majority of member states, recommendations, these country-specific recommendations that are part of the semester, are relatively bold, like improving the conditions for the operation of the economy. It's this kind of thing. It's nothing compared with the past, this period of the Troika, where things were very precise. And in that context, it depends on, it's up to the member states. The ball is on the field of member states. So whatever member states propose to the Commission was discussed in terms of relevance, and there are landmarks that are negotiated and that were negotiated between the Commission and the member states. And if they reach those landmarks, they are reimbursed of the cost of this transformation. So yes, I mean, there is this opportunity, but as Maria Manuel was saying, it's up to the member state to say what they want to do in the general context of improving the effectiveness of the public administration or the conditions for investment in the economy. So no, it's not imposed. So it depends on the member states and on your participation and participation of citizens, so that in fact you do the right things, but the means are there. The means are, and financial support is a necessary, not sufficient condition to implement anything. And so this
also depends on the European Commission, interoperability between the systems in order to simplify the management of the funds, Elisa. It's for you. Yes. It's my last words.
I know. I'm addressing it.
Thank you very much.
We ended a good note, and I must thank you all for this opportunity. A panel full of women, I must say, and I'm really happy for that. I thank to Maria Manuel Leitão Marques, to Commissioner Elisa Ferreira, and also to Lídia Pereira, and of course to all the students that were attended, and to Nova SB Students Union and the Nova Economics Club for this opportunity. I hope you can connect to Economia Viva and maybe keep in touch in a recent future. Bye-bye.
Another year. Another year has passed. Economia Viva is back. Monetary policy, higher education, international politics, and how to fight inequality. Another year has passed. Economia Viva is back. This edition will bring you debate. Another year has passed. Economia on the future of monetary policy. Another year has passed, and Economia Viva is back. This edition will bring you debates on the future of monetary policy, higher education, international politics, and how to fight inequality. But what we are most excited about is to be back. Join us at Nova SPE Carcavelos campus.
A school, a community of world citizens dedicated to the development of talent and knowledge that impacts the world. A school of business and economics with a fundamental role to play, supporting those who strive to be better, people, professionals, leaders, driven by insight and enterprise. At our home in Carcavelos, a top-ranked international school, member of the SEMS Global Alliance, offering innovative and excellent pre-experience programs entirely taught in English, bachelor's in economics and bachelor's in management for a life-transforming experience with curriculum-enhancing activities and integration of technology advancements and digital ubiquity. Master's in business analytics, economics, finance, impact entrepreneurship and innovation, international development and public policy, and management. Ranked by the Financial Times and Ed Universal. 100% of our graduates working within 6 months of graduation at highly sought sectors and companies. We are widening our horizons. Together, we are Nova School for the Future.
Não sabe onde poupar, nem onde investir? Na Fidelidade é simples. Com o Fidelidade Savings tem disponíveis várias opções. Escolha a mais adequada para o que pretende alcançar. Tem alguma questão? Fale com a sua agência ou mediador Fidelidade ou vá a fidelidade.pt. Fidelidade, para que a vida